And this afternoon, the Christian Council of Ghana is wading into the controversial decision by the government of Ghana to contribute troops and deploy some members to ECOWAS, which is forming a standby force, which will later on be deployed in the coming days to restore constitutional order in the Republic of Niger after the presidential guard in the country deposed the democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum. In the next 24 hours, military chiefs will be converging here in Accra in furtherance of a directive by West African leaders to activate a standby force which experts fear may blow the entire region into a chaotic situation. Well, former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, says the recent takeover can be attributed to the poor level of governance and leadership on the African continent.
It's not just unconstitutional change of government that will transition to civilian or civil government quickly. No. I visited one of the countries not too long ago, and after 2 nights I came out with the feeling that the young boys who are in charge of government, military, are not thinking of transitioning in 3 years, in 5 years, not even in 10 years. They are thinking of 1 generation. They believe they require a generation to bring about the necessary change to the vestiges of colonialism, neo-colonialism, and bad governance. Now, to the constitutional change of government, we must now, to this end, as I said, a new phenomenon has been introduced even before the constitutional change of government. And that phenomenon in our sub-region is, and the whole of the Sahel region is initially the ICIC, Al-Qaeda and ISWAP, extremists who don't ask for anything other than their own way of doing things, be it religion, be it economic life, be it political life, be it social life. It must be their way and no other way other than theirs.
Well, that's his concern about the recent happenings in the Sahel region. Meanwhile, here in Ghana, our lawmakers are divided and remain, divided over a constitutional provision in Article 40 of the 1992 Constitution, where the minority believes and argues that it restricts President Akufo-Addo from deploying military troops, and that should be forming part of that ECOWAS intervention move. Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa yesterday, who's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament, after a crucial meeting between the Defence and Interior Committee, as well as his committee and the government delegation, did not seem to be convinced about this whole arrangement of deploying forces.
We have decided that we will not disclose the content of the discussions and the outcome of the meeting. So I would just say that it's been a good meeting for now.
From my monitoring, I see that Article 40 has come up. Legal issues and concerns, as of course your other ranking on this other side, the chairperson of the committee has been raising. Is Article 40 of concern to you as well as the minority?
The entire legality of anything that will happen must be of concern to all of us as lawmakers, and at the end of the day, it's about our national interest.
If that's anything to go by,
Article 73 and Article 40 is very clear.
Yes.
Our national interest must be at the center of any decision. Our national interest, and don't forget Article 40C encourages peaceful resolutions of matters.
But if you go to D, we are to adhere with whatever decision the sub-regional body ECOWAS.
So as I've told you, the matters are very sensitive and delicate, and that's why.
But I'm talking about law, because that, I heard that come up on the committee. That this is a matter of law. It will come up strongly at you as the matter.
As you do know, consultations are going to continue on this matter. This is a very sensitive matter, and since we have a collective agreement that we will not divulge the details at this point, I think that we should go with that. But as time progresses, I'm sure that we are going to have.
How will you diffuse a legal argument? This is not about what transpired, but I know.
I exchanged there with Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa yesterday in Parliament when the government delegation engaged his committee and that of the Defence and Interior Committee of Parliament. But the Christian Council of Ghana says that the president ought to be cautious about this whole decision, taking together with his colleagues, sub-regional leaders, to move into the Republic of Niger with a military force. Joining us now is Reverend Dr. Cyril Fayose. He's the General Secretary of the Christian Council of Ghana. Thank you, sir, for spending some time with us. We've seen some churches go ahead of the umbrella body of the Christian Council and issuing their position on the matter. It's not far away from what you're telling us now, that the president ought to be cautious about the deployment of the troops into Niger. Why is the church alarmed about what the leaders are describing as simply a security measure to protect all of us?
Thank you very much for the question, and good afternoon, late afternoon, good evening to your listeners and viewers. The church is concerned because it's a very delicate and complicated issue at this point. First of all, any form of intervention, military intervention, can have so many repercussions, so many implications, not only in Niger, but in the whole sub-region. So it's not going to be just going in there, getting the military junta out and reinstating the president and then coming back out. It may be a protracted, a prolonged engagement. Lives will be lost. There may be repercussions even back here at home. People will flee the country and we will have to receive them, and so on and so forth. So I'm of the opinion that we should explore all peaceful options before we go in for a military intervention. So the president,
anytime that comes up, I'm quick to refer anyone making that argument to what ECOWAS is reporting to us officially. At the last meeting, the indication on the statement is that General Abdusalami Abubakar was sent into Niger. He was repelled. They sent the Sultan of Sokoto. He was repelled. I'm just wondering who else will appeal to the conscience of this leadership in Niger for them to sit down and talk. What other options do you think that the leaders should be taking a look at right now?
I think they should not throw their hands in the air so soon. We should continue to explore peaceful options. If they have tried once and failed, tried the second time and failed, they should try again. It's possible that they will succeed. Let us be very, very, very cautious and careful when we try to go in for a military intervention. From what we hear, there are other complications in this matter. There are other forces that may back the military junta. So we must be careful. If it's a question of just going in, getting the junta out and reinstating the president, we can do that. But it may not go that way, and that is the fear that we are experiencing. So let's do our very best. Let's explore all options. Let's go from A to Z, before the military intervention comes in.
The fear is that the church is coming rather late in the day, knowing that the leaders are resolute. In fact, as we speak, there's a statement from the Ghana Armed Forces indicating that the chiefs of defense staff will be meeting tomorrow. And it looks like they're moving on and marching on with this whole move to operationalize or activate a standby force. You're rather coming late in the day, isn't it?
I do not think it's only the church that is coming in late. We may be coming in late, but I think even ECOWAS is coming in late. The reason why I say ECOWAS is coming in late is because there is some legitimacy to the overthrow in that country. And there is some huge support for the military junta that is in power now. So it is important that we explore those options as well. There are factors that led to the overthrow in the first place. And maybe even ECOWAS and all of us should be looking at those factors as well. Because as I said, there seemed to be popular support for this uprising. And so just going in there may not solve the problem. Let's look at it again carefully and see how best we can resolve it through peaceful means.
I see. How about the church reaching out to our leadership? Because you're not the only Christian group raising concerns about the military action. Even in Nigeria itself, where the decision was made, the religious groupings from across the aisle are all moving in to say, let's be cautious with the military deployment. Here in Ghana, what moves are you taking? We know that the president, as ECOWAS is reporting to us, is a firm believer in the approach that the sub-regional body is taking. Have you reached out to the president as the Christian Council just to try and at least find some way out?
Not yet, but we are in the process of doing that. We are working, we are pulling our resources together so that we can have a meeting with the president to state our position on the matter. So we are going to do that. And this is a precursor to what we are going to do behind closed doors with the presidency and the government in power.
And your basic mission in that engagement will be to either understand what's happening or implore the president to withdraw from a decision he's already taken.
Our basic agenda is to encourage the president to explore diplomatic and peaceful means and processes to resolve this matter and not go in for the military intervention to start with. Military intervention can be a very, very last resort. But for now, we want to encourage, our leaders will even be ready to facilitate the process. Some Christian leaders may be willing to go in there and find ways to resolve this matter peacefully.
I see. And you were talking about some factors earlier which you believe that West African leaders should be paying attention to, and those factors are not heeding at all, are they? The issue about the need for good governance, as we just heard from the former Nigerian president, and the sudden breakdown in building institutions, believing in the constitution.
Yeah.
The church should also take part of that blame, isn't it? The fact that you're not able to preach to the conscience of the people. The president, as we know, is Christian. I'm not saying he's done anything wrong. You go all across West Africa, and all of these leaders that appear to be having the challenge are Christian or belong to the other side. The clergy is not able to preach to the conscience of the people. You agree?
Well, it is, my brother, it is one thing preaching to the conscience of society and individuals, and it's another thing for people to adhere to whatever advice or admonitions you give them. So I believe that the church may not have spoken directly to the issue, but in very general terms, we have been speaking about good governance, doing the right thing, not cutting corners, not trying to change constitutions to favor you. We have been talking about those things, maybe not directly. But the point is that no matter how much or how many times we say this in our pulpits, it's up to the individual to adhere to it or not.
Are you running away from the responsibility that you hold as religious leaders?
No, not at all.
You hold the moral compass, isn't it? You're simply going away from your core responsibility. You're preachers. You preach to us every Sunday.
Yes, and we continue to do that. Every Sunday we are in the pulpits and we are preaching. We are telling you to do the right and not to do the wrong. But believe me or not, Ghana is 70% Christian. We preach that we should desist from corrupt acts, and we are still engaged in it, even up to now. So it's not only the the politicians or people in power, but it's even the ordinary person on the street.
Mm-hmm.
We keep telling them the right thing to do, but somehow sin is very powerful.
Reverend Fayose, I'm asking this question because, and I'm sure that you've also heard of this feedback or criticism, if you want to call it, about the Christian Council. The fact that many of these bodies have become very silent in recent times. And you take a look at the area of corruption that you're pointing out to, plethora of issues happening, the Christian Council hasn't spoken. It's been part of the criticism, you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. But let me also say that things move very, very fast in the media and in public. And sometimes we do not have a complete handle on the issue before you begin to ask us to speak. We are, I'm sure you are referring to the Honorable Minister Cecilia Dapa's or former minister's case, for instance.
I guess she's not the only one. I guess she's not the only one.
There are so many others, but the point is that there is still, it's still in process. We are finding more about it, and we are also thinking about what to say about it. Of course, there are some very clear aspects of it that are not right. A public officer, for instance, should not keep that amount of money at home. But we are waiting for the right time to make a comprehensive statement on these corruption issues generally. So we are looking at the issues, but I think sometimes we are rushed to speak.
Right.
But as a very old, established organization that advocates for doing the right in society, we have to proceed cautiously. We should not just get up and speak. We have to get our facts right. So while we gather all the facts, it may look like we are sleeping on the job. We are not coming forward, but eventually we will come forward.
Okay. Another area I want us to focus on is about the way forward. We may be looking at all of these countries go up in flames and the military takeovers, but the concern should also be about Ghana being a beacon of democracy for the continent, not just the SAB region. We must be concerned about protecting our own democracy here. First of all, what's your assessment of the landscape? Are we safe? Are we totally insulated from everything that's happening around us? And if not, what steps should we be taking, and what moves will you initiate to bring everyone along to keep what we have?
I will not say we are 100% insulated. We are as vulnerable as all the other countries in the sub-region. We have been fortunate. We have been, by the grace of God, we have been peaceful so far, but anything can trigger it. In the last few years, the landscape had not been very, very, very good. The domestic debt exchange and COVID and the inflation rates, the whole economic situation is not the best, and people are really suffering and agitating. I'm not trying to blame anyone, but some of these situations can trigger such a situation. But I believe that we have been in this democratic experiment in the Fourth Republic for the last 30 years. And I think we have some shock absorbers that can protect us. But that notwithstanding, we should not be complacent. We should improve our game so that we will not get there. Yeah.
Reverend, as we wrap up on the conversation, in the next 24 hours, the military chiefs will be meeting at the military headquarters, Burma camp. If you had an option or a message perhaps for the president, would you say that meeting be called off, at least, just to pave way for more dialogue?
I think the military will still have a role to play, so I think they can go ahead and have their meeting. But that should not determine whether there will be a military intervention or not. What I mean by that is that the politicians and the diplomats must also play their role, continue the peace efforts, the shuttle diplomacy to try to resolve the issue. But at the background, I believe that the military must also continue to do put their things together, if you like, so that when it becomes necessary, as I said, it is the last resort, the very last resort. We must explore all options. But since it's a last resort, it's still a possibility. It's still a possibility because, as I've said earlier, that Christians, we believe in non-violence. But if someone attacks you, someone is about to kill you, in self-defense, you must also respond. That can be the last resort. That can be a situation in which it becomes necessary for ECOWAS to respond. Because, one successful overthrow in one country encourages another in another country. So there is a reason for that. But as I said, it should be after we have done everything humanly possible before we go that route.
And you are a religious person as well. Biblically speaking, is there any grounding in the call you're making out to our leaders? On what grounds are you making that call? And what word of admonishment would you want to point them to in the holy books as you believe in?
Oh, our Lord Jesus Christ is a Prince of Peace. Where there is war, where there is storm, where there is calamity, he speaks and peace comes to the situation. He says, my peace I give you, not as the world gives, because the world has a different set of peace. So, and when even things were done to Jesus, even when he was being killed, I was saying that sometimes if you are being killed, you should react in self-defense. But even Jesus, when he was being killed, he said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing, just so that there will be peace. So it's one of the options we even have to explore. We must do everything in our power that there will be non-violence in the situation. So that's the basis upon which it's also true that there's eye for an eye in the scriptures. But if we go for that option, an eye for an eye, we'll have a world that is blind. So that is not a good option. We must find a way to settle things peacefully. Thank you.
Grateful for joining us this afternoon, Reverend Dr. Cyril Fayose, General Secretary of the Christian Council of Ghana. A lot is developing on the story because even as we speak, the German Development Minister, Schulze, is actually discussing the situation in Africa's Sahel region during a 4-day trip, which we understand includes a possible stop not just in Mauritania, but he's also heading to Nigeria. Just last month, the minister took over as the president of the Sahel Alliance, which coordinates some international cooperation for the development of Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, which has gone up in flames, and Chad as well. All of these areas are having challenges. So let's bring in DW's Thomas Sparrow, who's with our partners, joining us from Berlin in Germany. Thomas, let's start off with the goals of the trip. For what reason are we seeing the minister move to the likes of Nigeria and Mauritania?
Well, the current situation in Niger is clearly dominating the agenda of German Development Minister Schulze's trip to Mauritania and Nigeria. Schulze planned this trip to discuss how the conflict can end diplomatically and through civilian means, and that's actually why a key part of the trip is a meeting with representatives of ECOWAS in Nigeria. But the minister also wants to go beyond the immediate resolution and find ways of improving what she described as some of the root causes of the region's problems: prospects for young people, employment, security and poverty, among others.
And we know that already there are talks about what the external factors are contributing. So let's look at it in the situation of Germany. What's Germany contributing to all of these discussions that's going on?
This is actually an important and an interesting question, because this trip comes after Germany took over the rotating presidency of the Sahel Alliance. The Sahel Alliance is described as the most important group of international backers of the region. And Germany was one of the founding members of this project in 2017 in order to support the countries in the Sahel which have very serious security challenges as well as political and economic problems. And Germany, by the way, is also one of the largest donors to the alliance, which has 18 members and has spent more than 28 billion euros in the region. But despite this cooperation, it's also important to stress that there has been criticism of Germany's policy in the region.
Okay, so let's get to that. Let's talk about the criticisms then. What are some of them that you can share with us?
Indeed, Germany had hoped Niger would be an anchor of stability in the Sahel region. But the current situation has not only revealed the country's instability, Niger instability, but has also generated criticism towards what some say was a miscalculation on Germany's part. Some critics have even gone further, asking whether Germany's overall Sahel strategy, which was realigned not long ago, could have failed altogether. Authorities here still believe their presence is important in the Sahel region, not only for the development of the region, but also when you look at wider international challenges. After all, in the Sahel region, you have all sorts of problems and issues that are in ways interconnected: migration routes, international security, poverty. And it's also a place where German leaders say Russian influence is growing. This all explains in part why Germany's foreign minister said, whether we like it or not, what happens in the Sahel concerns us.
Well, we are all concerned about that. DW's Thomas Sparrow joining us from Berlin. Grateful for that update. You're watching The Pulse on the Joy News channel. When we return, we'll talk about the National Democratic Congress. The party says that it's unhappy about the latest decision by government to place a tax on betting. We'll go into the details when we return. Please stay.